Good morning. Welcome to The Resilient Show. I hope that was a slightly quieter introduction. Had a couple of people telling me that it was a little bit loud for 7:30 in the morning. So that was a slightly quieter introduction, but boy, are we going to warm things up quite quickly today. Today's show is entitled Our Health, and it's dedicated to everyone who's just trying to lead a slightly healthier life. Why are we focusing on health today? Well, two amazing guests today. At the back end of the show, we've got Mel Garrity from Masterton in New Zealand, who practices neuropuncture. Now, it would be too easy to say neuropuncture, sticking needles in you and then electrocuting you as well. So I'm going to leave it there, and Mel's going to tell us so much more about it in the second half of the show. First half of the show, first ever returning, oh no it's not, because we had Steve, and we're going to talk about Steve in a minute, but returning guest, we have got Monica Bloom, all the way from San Francisco, the Ayurvedic practitioner, and we're going to dive more into the different practices of Ayurveda and just maybe remove some of the questions and maybe even fear that we might have about different types of different ways to look after our health. But first up, we need to celebrate. We are celebrating on The Resilient Show today Steve Carlin. Oh my word. I thought the album was good. I did. And that's why we've been playing it for the last 6 or 7 weeks on the show. I went to see Steve live last Friday night. Hold the phone. What an absolutely amazing concert. His last 3 tracks, the whole concert was great. His last 3 tracks, the man just came alive. It was awesome. It was just such a great concert. And then, stand by for this, he found out that his little old album that we've been playing on the show got to number 14. It was released at number 14 in the New Zealand album charts. How cool is that? So, we all know Steve. Steve's part of the Resilient Show, and we've listened to we've played his music. Number 14 in New Zealand album charts. Yeah, Steve, honoured to call you a friend, amazed at the music, and that concert last week was fantastic. And talking of music, we play a little bit, and it's Friday morning, so it is time to get up and boogie. And look, since we're going to be talking about health, the importance of getting our bodies moving in the moment cannot be understated. Those of us who fall out of bed, roll into the shower, and make our way to the bus stop or into the car, take some time. Dance to a tune, get the blood flowing through the body. It's fun. We begin to waken up a little bit. Our brain activates a little bit. So wherever you are, whether you are still in bed, do some moon dancing like they did in Gregory's Girl. What a great 1980s film from Scotland that was. Do some moon dancing, do some dancing in the shower, do some dancing in the kitchen. Wherever you are, here it comes. Let's do some dancing.
Why can't this moment last forever, Tonight eternity's an open door. No, don't ever stop doing the things you do. Don't go. And every breath I take, I'm breathing you. Till the end of time. From now on, only you and I. We're going up, 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 up. Euphoria, never lost a piece of us. A beating love within my heart. We're going up, 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 infinity. We're higher, we're reaching for divinity.
Euphoria, going up. I was really excited when I found Euphoria because I've listened to it before and thought, right, we're actually going to move away from the 1970s, 1980s boogieing that we do on a Friday morning. We're going to pick something modern, so let's go with Euphoria. And then I looked at it and it's 12 years old. Oh, come on, 12, well, it's slightly better than the 80s. Give me that, at least. Euphoria, Lauren, from 2012. Right, we're talking about health today, and health has become something more and more close to my heart as time has gone on. Not least because I'm not as young as I used to be, and reflecting on all of the things that Mark Rollins was talking about last week when we spoke to him about getting ready for retirement, getting ready for that time when we've got more time on our hands, but we don't just want to die. You know what I mean? Because that's what used to happen. We'd work, we'd retire, and after about 12 to 16 years, that would be it. Our lives would be over. We would shuffle off this mortal coil. But it's not like that anymore. It's not like that. We've got so much life ahead of us. In my very first foray into my own coaching business, I called the business 80 Summers. 80 Summers because that, at the time, was the average number of summers that we had here on this planet. 80 summers to squeeze all of that life in. Now, that is extending. Many people listening to this may even live beyond 100. As I mentioned last week, we said goodbye to the Lady Elizabeth's mum on the 26th of June, and this week was the funeral. And we were talking about, well, what's Joe, Dibbs's husband, what's he going to do? And I said, he's got another 20 years in him. Let's give him time. Let's give him a little bit of time. But he's got 20 years in him of more life. So there's no point in waiting till we get to retirement to start thinking about it. And it's a little bit the same with our health. We've got to be thinking about our health. But what do I mean by health? And too often it seems tough. Now, I was a fat kid. Right? I was the fat kid. Was bullied, didn't have any friends, so I ate. I found comfort following my dad's death by eating. And as you know, that then led on to a drinking habit as well. But I was a fat kid because I found comfort in food, and generally unhealthy food. And unfortunately, that's generally the way that we all live. We eat for comfort. We eat for boredom. Have you ever been on a long flight? Remember those things, aeroplanes? Have you ever been on a long flight and you're just looking forward to the food coming out? Now, let's face it, airline food often ain't that great. Beef or chicken, that's your choice. But we eat it because it fills time. And with the world being, with everything being so easy in the world, we're looking to fill time, and often we just go for food. Let's just eat it, whatever it is. And high sugar content foods are addictive. So we want more of it, don't we? It's never just one square of chocolate, is it? But we're dealing with the effect. We're not actually dealing with the cause of why we want to eat, because that's sometimes just boredom. Sometimes it's to fill a gap in our lives. But more broadly than that, health means so much more than just the food we stick in our mouths. you look, we'll talk about this at the end of the show, the various things that we might be able to do. But too often, health is what we eat. But health's also what we drink. How much water do you drink? I know people who say, I don't like the taste of water. Well, sort of try other ones. Drink water. We should be drinking far more water than we generally are because our brains need water. Our human bodies are 80% water. We need water to keep our brain working. If we get dehydrated, then our brains can't think clearly. If we are dehydrated, often we feel hungry. Go and have a glass of water and you'll feel less hungry for a little while. So we've got to be careful about what we're putting into our bodies. And I've spoken about alcohol before. I'm not going to today, but yeah, be careful about how much alcohol you're drinking. How much fizzy drinks? How much fizzy drinks? How many glasses of fizzy drinks? How many cans of pop or ginger, as it was called when I was growing up in Scotland? Ginger. Small aside, I bought a bottle of Iron Brew this week. Now, Iron Brew is a drink from my childhood in Scotland. Iron Brew made in Scotland from girders. I haven't had a glass of Iron Brew for years. It was great, but it was a treat. Yes, it was diet Iron Brew, but it was a treat because we shouldn't be drinking too much fizzy pop. Now, look, this isn't turning into a lecture. All I'm doing is highlighting what we put into our bodies actually reflects the people that we become. So be careful about the food we put in, but also let's think about how we exercise. Now, I am not, and this has been a debate in the Darling household for decades about what exercise is. Exercise to me is hard, getting a sweat on, and it's not just getting a sweat on, it is drowning in your own sweat, out of breath, really, really hard exercise. But I've come to learn that taking the dog for a walk is also exercise. Doing the housework is also exercise, if you do it with intent. All right, I'm going to do the vacuuming, but I'm going to do it lunge. I'm going to do some vacuuming, and I'm going to actually do it at pace. That can be exercise as well. So get out, get dancing. Stick the music on. Turn the volume up. Do some dancing. Get a little bit out of breath. That's all we're talking about with exercise, but do it frequently. Because this is building to actually the real point of what we eat, what we drink, and how we exercise. We also need to meditate. When I work with clients, I talk about how we bring our brain frequency down from beta 3 panic state down to alpha state, which is the state that we fall asleep in. But we can do that when we're awake to actually get rid of some of the noise, some of the voices in our heads. Remember them? If there's one saying you don't have voices in your head, there you go, you just found one. All of these things, how we calm our brains, how we exercise, what we put into our bodies, eating and drinking, it affects how we feel. It affects our mental health. And there is nothing more important than the mental health of ourselves and our families, because that leads to the mental health of the nation. And it's rather unfortunate that seems to be being missed by the people who we trust to look after us across the globe. I will leave that one there, not wishing to get into a rant. But the other thing we can do, and this is why we've got Mel and Monica coming on the show today, we can also look at other ways of looking after ourselves. For those of us who are brought up in the Western world, the developed world, we have a concept of what health looks like. Who knew that cornflakes were invented to stop men masturbating? Yup. Leave that one there. These concepts of health that we have in the developed world, but there are so many other places we can look to understand more about our bodies, how we can lead more healthy lives. There is Chinese medicine, there is Eastern medicine, there are so many ways that we can look at living more healthily. And that's what we're going to do after this next track. We're going to get Monica up on the line from California. San Francisco, and we're going to talk about her practice, and we're going to remove some of the fears and maybe misunderstandings we have on what Ayurvedic life can be like. And we're going to get into some of the words and what they mean so that maybe we begin to get excited about doing something different. Fear is a lack of knowledge. That's all it is. So let's give ourselves some more knowledge. But here is a track that talks a tiny little bit about Monica's hometown.
We built this city. We built this city on rock and roll. Built this city. We built this city on rock and roll. Say you don't know me, I recognize my face. Say you don't care who goes to that kind of place. Knee deep in the hoopla, sinking in your fight. Too many runaways, eating up the night. Marconi plays the mama. Listen to the radio. Don't you remember? We built this city. We built this city on rock and roll. We built this city. We built this city on rock and roll. Built this city. We built this city on rock and roll. Someone always playing corporation games. Who cares? They're always changing corporation names. We just want to dance here. Someone stole the stage. They call us irresponsible. Write us off the page. Marconi plays the mama. Listen to the radio. Don't you remember? We built this city. We built this city on rock and roll. We built this city. We built this city
We built this city with rock and roll, and why wouldn't you build a city with rock and roll? And at some point in the song, they do talk about the Golden Gate Bridge, and I remember hearing our first guest talking about when she decided that actually I want to do something different with my life, and it involved standing somewhere looking at the Golden Gate Bridge, I think, in California, in San Francisco. So, as I said, we're going to talk to Monica, welcoming her back onto the show for the second time to talk about Ayurvedic practice and what some of the big gnarly words mean and why we shouldn't actually be afraid of them. Monica, good morning.
Good morning, Stu.
Good.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, that's no problem at all. I love the fact that for those of you who sort of have listened, normally I just phone people, but now I Zoom them. So now I can actually see Monica, and it looks like an absolutely amazing day in California.
It's gorgeous. So we are up near Lake Tahoe. So that's why you see all the trees behind me. And
Yeah.
I'm surrounded by all these. I'm in like a big pine forest kind of area and blue sky. And it's so nice. And then I get to see my friend from around the world. And it's a different day for you and for me, literally.
Yeah,
it's only
it is.
Thursday here.
I had people
yeah.
phoning me yesterday saying, "Are you on the radio on Thursday and Friday?" I went, "Well, in a sort of way, yes, I am. I transcend time. We transcend time." Well, we know that.
Dude, that's amazing. Anyways, carry on.
Right. So this morning, when we spoke last time, we spoke about Ayurveda and how you got into it and why you found it important for your life. But sometimes when we begin to look at, I'm not going to say alternative because I believe that that's a wrong word to use, but different ways in which we can maybe learn to live healthily. But we look at these words and we think, oh, that's a little bit scary. So we stop. So what I want to do is really simplify what you're talking about versus modern medicine. So modern medicine versus our Ayurveda. And look, when I get this wrong, call me out. Let's get the wordage right. But what do you see as the main differences between modern medicine and what you're practicing?
Oh, well, there's a lot of differences actually because, modern medicine is focused on the disease that you have. Mm-hmm. They're like, oh, you have this thing. And so based on these test results or based on these practices or surgeries or whatever, we're going to take out that thing, change that thing, remove that thing, treat that thing. And in Ayurveda, it's different. They go, oh, you have that thing? All right. And they look at you as the individual that you are. And they look at they ask you like lifestyle questions, questions about your daily routine, questions about the food you've been eating, questions about your stress levels. And they try and they work to heal the individual that has this problem as a whole, instead of zeroing in on just the problem and treating all the people with that problem the same way. And so that's like the main reason. And that's why I love it, because it's like we all, like, just because like you and I might have a headache, we might have a headache for totally different reasons. Like you might be dehydrated and maybe I've been staring at a computer screen for too long, right? And so what Ayurveda does is it goes to the root, and it's like, well, geez, Stu, you probably should start drinking some more water so you don't get those headaches. It's like, well, geez, Monica, you should probably not be staring at that computer screen for 16 hours a day and you wouldn't get those headaches. And instead, it's just like, deliver the medicine to both people in Western medicine, but maybe not necessarily fix the root of why it's happening in the first place. And that's one of the main things. There's actually quite a lot of differences. And I just want to be clear about something. I never want to sound like I'm poo-pooing Western medicine because I really believe it has its place. I think it's powerful. I do believe, though, that it is our responsibility. Oh my gosh, next time we'll talk about the journey, but our responsibility for the sake of the health workers that are out there working so hard for us to take care of ourselves and our diet and lifestyle first, because that's our job. We got to own that. Like, if we're not doing the daily things to take care of our bodies and our minds and eat good foods and exercise and like think positive thoughts so our mindset can be right, then we haven't really given as much to ourselves as we need to. And because of that, that's why I think Western healthcare feels rushed. It feels rushed. Like, how are they going to fix all that? They got so many people here, just take this thing and let me know if it helps. And so I think that there's a few things going on there. But anyway, that's one of the main differences.
So can I just jump in and go back a little bit, back to something you said, because this is, there's two things that I've just taken from what you said. Western medicine deals with the effect rather than the cause in many cases, and because they're so rushed, they only have a chance to deal with the effect. But something else that I read a book years ago, and unfortunately I can't remember the name of the book, but it spoke about how the definition of average has changed over the last century. Average used to mean that you were the best that you could be. And now average has come to mean it's a baseline for everyone else. So my blood pressure, and in fact, let's go with my pulse. My pulse should be around about 72 beats per second. It's not. Mine sits at high 40s, low 50s. It always has. So I'm not bothered about the fact that that's where my pulse rate sits, because actually that's my normal. Entirely cool. But because it's not, when I do pop into the doctor, on the odd occasion I do, it's like, oh, but you're not average. No, of course I'm not average. Nearly swore there. I'll stop. Of course I'm not average. I'm me. And we've got to address us. And there are so many other ways in our lives that we should be addressing that you're right. It starts with us. People complain about our governments and big organisations controlling us. But hey, what can you control? And we can control what we put into ourselves. We can get... Okay, I'm on the rant now. I'm going to stop. Back to you.
It's a good rant. It's a good rant, and it's right. And so, like, here's a prime example, too. Like, a long, long time ago, I threw away a scale. I have never owned a scale because I always felt like when I looked at the number on a scale, like I was muscular as a soccer player, football player, right? Mm-hmm. And so I always felt very muscular, and I felt like because of the number on the scale, I felt like I was heavier than I should be. And I just decided, like, my clothes fit good. I feel good. I know I'm healthy. I'm going to chuck that thing because it doesn't matter what it says, and it doesn't matter all these calculations. This is my body. This is how I feel balanced. And so I'll encourage anybody listening, maybe on that topic, is you know when you feel balanced in yourself, and you know when you don't. And that is, I think, the biggest thing that we have to remember, that we have this power within us. We have this intuition. We've got these feelings about our own bodies because we know it. You're like, no, it's not normal for me to have, that pulse, and everybody's going to pick on me for it for forever because they can, because I don't match up with their numbers or fit in their boxes. But Ayurveda says you don't have to. You just have to know who you are. Everything depends. And it's because we're completely unique individuals. Never before and never again will there be a Stu Darling with a pulse in the high 40s.
I think there are a number of people breathing a sigh of relief when you said that. But look, I completely agree that it is about when I do work regarding resilience, I've come to realise that resilience is certainty in who I am, where I belong in the world, and how I can give back. But it's got to start with certainty in who I am, and we know when we feel right and we feel wrong. We know exactly what it's about. And I was at a meeting yesterday, and it was meant to be a budget meeting. And do you know what? I just really did not want to do numbers yesterday. And I said to them, I said, guys, right, I know we were sitting down to talk budgets today with a company. And I went, we're not. Let's pick something else because my head's just not in it today. Call it. Because all of a sudden people go, wow, that's a little bit of honesty. Right, so we've done we are unique. And I love chapter 2 that's called Unique in the book. And we've just pushed through that, and I've actually, if you're watching on the telly box, there is Monica's book that I'll put the link up to so that you can find it. But we are unique, but we fall into 3 categories. So talk to me, doshas.
Kinda. So let's talk about the 3 doshas. And dosha is a word in Sanskrit. Don't be afraid of it, but it essentially means fault in Sanskrit. And it means fault because when you find out what your dosha or two is, those are it's the tendencies that you have that show your balances and your imbalances. So they're almost like warning flags. Like, oh, hey, you're prone to since you have a lot of fire in you, you're prone to heartburn. Or, oh, hey, since you have a lot of wind in you, you might be prone to I don't know, constipation. Oh, hey, if you have a lot of earth in you, you might be prone to weight gain. Simple things like that. So really quick, the 3 doshas, we have all 3 of them in us. Everybody does. It's what the body's made of. Okay. And the body is made of the 3 doshas based on the 5 elements. So I'm going to talk a little bit slower so you guys can grasp this. So this is where it gets a little...
We're getting excited. Yeah, an American and a Scotsman. This is going to go well.
It's so good. Not even an American, a Milwaukee. I'm from Milwaukee and a Scotsman. That's magic. All right. So in Ayurveda, we have the 5 great elements: space, air, fire, water, earth. Okay, so we've got all those 5 elements in us. The 5 elements are everywhere on the planet. The 5 elements are everywhere in the outer space. This is why Ayurveda says that we are healed by nature, because we are part of nature, because it is part of us. Now, with those 5 elements, we break it down into the 3 doshas. The doshas are the energies created by the 5 elements. Cool? All right. So the first dosha is called Vata dosha. Vata dosha is made of space and air. So it's light, and it's the energy of movement. Okay, so Vata dosha is known as the king of the doshas because the other 2 can't move without it. It influences everything. And in fact, if the other doshas have a problem, Vata comes in and actually makes it worse. So the first one is Vata dosha, energy of movement. Think about how much our bodies are moving every day. There's blood flowing, there's lips flapping, there's hands going, there's digestion happening, there's holes and things and moving and air. Everything's happening in our body. Cells recreating all the time. And that is Vata. It's involved in everything. Okay, that's the first one. Number 2 dosha is Pitta dosha, and that's the energy of transformation, because think about how much the body's transforming every day. Every day we get a little bit older. Every day our tissues change a little bit. Every day we get stronger, we get weaker, we change everything. Our digestion, we eat food, it changes in our body to be useful things for the body, and that sorts it out, and you poop out the rest. And so that's a small example of Pitta dosha, made of fire and water elements, and it is the energy of transformation. That's the second one. Now, the third one is Kapha dosha, which is made of earth and water, or water and earth. So this is a sturdy one. This is a lot of our structure in our body. It's a sturdiness. It's how our physical body is built, which is really important, because without it, we would be like a windy inferno, right? Kind of like a windy wildfire. We don't want that. We need earth and water to stick us together and keep our physical structure strong and built. And so Kapha dosha is the energy of lubrication and structure. Think about, as we age, we get older, we lose that lubrication and structure. We start to dry out. We start to get old, dry, and crusty and crumbly. And we don't want that. Everybody wants youth. Everybody wants to be, plump in their skin. And we don't want wrinkles. And we want to feel strong in our bones and all that. So the 3 doshas: Vata, made of space and air, energy of movement; Pitta, made of fire and water, energy of transformation; Kapha, made of water and earth, energy of lubrication and structure. All of us have all 3 of them.
So how do we find out?
All of us have all 3 of them.
But
All
surely
right, so
one
I'll
of them
tell
must
you.
be principal.
Yeah, kinda. It gets complicated. I'm not gonna lie, because it's like a medical science, right? But for our purposes, let's be simple. So, based on these 3 doshas, remember I said they were a warning. So, let's say Stu is a Pitta, which he is, by the way, y'all. Stu's a Pitta. Look at his work. He transforms lives. right?
Wow, thank you.
He's a transformer. Yeah, and
Oh,
you got light
I love
colored
that.
hair,
I'm a
and you got light
transformer.
colored-
Thank you.
You're a transformer. That's what you do. Because if you couldn't transform something, if you couldn't see it change from one to the other and see an improvement, that would frustrate you. You'd be like, well, what the heck's the point? Am I right?
Just a little bit. Just a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, just a tad. So we're gonna have one or two of these doshas in us that are most dominant, that show the most in our personality, in our emotions, in our psychology, and that's fine. That's kind of what paints our gifts. But also, remember, warning flag. It also is going to point to being like, all right, well, this could be a potential problem for you. So let's just take Stu for example. 'Cause
Oh,
it's
yeah.
fun.
Why not?
So
Go for it.
so Stu, as a pitta, he can be prone to. Now you can tell me if I'm right or wrong. We've actually never talked about this, but you could be prone to heating physical problems. Like if you ate too many spicy chicken wings and you sat in the heat, you might get a little heartburn, or you might get red blotchy skin or something like that. You might be competitive, so you like to.
No, I'm not
you like to-
competitive. Not at all.
whatever. Yeah, I'm surprised you didn't like your budget meeting, because pitches like that stuff too. They like analytics, and they
Yep.
like sorting, and they like organizing. They've got a leadership. There's a leadership about them. Gee, do you think Stu's a leader, creating a whole thing about the resilience show and leading through life in your book? Your book has lead in the title, dude. You're totally a pitta.
Yeah, okay.
Anyway. Okay, so you don't have to know the doshas like I do, but in that chapter you were referring to, it explains the physicalness of each dosha and how you can start to recognize them. It explains the personality, it explains the emotions and the psychology behind each one of them. And there's a test in there that you can take, and it helps you sort of figure out which one you are, so that you can be mindful of how to keep your diet and lifestyle balanced, so you actually don't go out of balance. So Stu's not like, oh, good idea, I'm going to have the Inferno chicken wings and sit outside in 90 degrees. I don't know what that is in Celsius, but hot weather in the
Yep.
sun. Yeah, it's hot. Because he's like, first of all, I'll get sunburn. Guess what? Burns in the word. It relates to fire, which is pitta. You might get heartburn, when burn is in the word, relates to fire. Do you see what I'm saying? And so, like, you could have these burning problems and think something is wrong with you. Then you go to Western medicine, you're like, something's wrong with me. And they're like, well, here, take an antacid or whatever. And maybe you think that you have that problem all the time. And I'm sitting here going, no, know yourself. Get the teriyaki chicken wings and sit in the shade with a glass of cool water. And you will not have any problems digesting that food. Does that make sense?
Hey, Luke, totally. And thank you for just picking on a couple of really the positive ends of pitta, and me personally, because I'm quite sure the Lady Elizabeth is sitting at home going, all right, bring this. So what happens if we don't understand ourselves and we get out of balance? Now you talk about that eating spicy food might not be great for me, and it's good. There's going to be a response, a reaction within me. Once we begin to recognize that, how do you recognize we're out of balance, and how do we get back into balance?
Yeah. So this is it's amazing you're asking this question, because it's one of the sources of confusion. People can usually take a dosha test and identify themselves fairly quickly. They're like, oh yeah, that's so me. Like, they just know, right? But then they get confused, because they're like, well, I'm this dosha, but what if my imbalance is that dosha? And then and they try and kind of self-diagnose. So I'll say this. If you feel imbalanced in any way, go back to the times when you weren't feeling imbalanced and look at what you were doing. A lot of times with my clients, they don't feel so good. And all I have to do, without telling them the whole Ayurvedic stuff, I say, well, tell me a time when you felt really good. And what were you doing? It always comes back to, like, I was eating really good, I was sleeping really good, I was exercising regularly. Like, it's usually really simple things. There is nothing that's like earth-shattering, whatever. It's very basic. And when I go, okay, well, what's changed now? Well, now I don't exercise as much anymore, or I don't at all because I've got different responsibilities at home and at work, and it takes up my time. And I don't have any energy at the end of the day, or like I can't eat good food because I just don't have time because of my responsibilities. Like it usually comes to something like that. And so I would encourage, even without knowing so much about Ayurveda, if you have an imbalance, go back and remember who you were when you felt at your healthiest and start and see if you're not doing those things. Go back and start doing those things. We are our best navigator. So it's easy to go reaching and looking around, reading things to figure out how to help yourself. But I will encourage you that you have the empowerment within you to know a little bit intuitively how to reset. And for the other part of your question, so that's part one, but the other part of your question in relation to your spicy chicken wings, you're like, well, yeah, you know how to fix that. Ayurveda uses the opposites. So listen, Vata dosha is made of space and air. What's the opposite of space and air? Well, it's going to be something that's very heavy. And so if you're having Vata problems and you're eating really light foods like salads or raw veggies or something like that, you're like, oh, well, why don't I have something more like that's warming and grounding, like your sweet potatoes or your pastas or something that has a groundedness to it instead of all these light and airy foods. Because in Ayurveda, like increases like, which is why Stu, 90 degrees, eating spicy chicken wings, he's already hot and fiery. He's going to eat hot and fiery foods. And the sun, remember the nature's our home, our larger governing structure, the sun is also hot. And so all those heats adds up, and we're small compared to the sun. And so we get affected by that. So it's almost like, to find your balance, you have to do the opposite. And that sounds very simple, but that's how Ayurveda solves it. If you're too cold, you need to warm up. If you're too heavy, you need to lighten up. If you're too light, you need to build some heaviness around you. That could be in your body, it could be in your food. Am I making any sense, or am I sounding like a wackadoo?
No, look, I think it's absolutely fascinating. I mean, there's a couple of things that I've that just jumped out at me there. We are our best navigator. That's huge. You go inside. Yes, we can reach out to all the help and coaches or medicine or whatever it is, but actually, at the end of the day, we have the answers within us. And the second point is, well, of course, we talk about balance. Go back to a time where you felt great. Csikszentmihalyi talks about it as being in flow. But, yeah, we need that sense of balance. And, already I'm thinking, right, I wonder if. And when we talk, when we ask, I wonder why, or I wonder if, then we're beginning to find the answer. So yeah, it all makes sense. And yet again, we've blown through, and absolutely fascinating. But I hope today we've actually removed some of the challenges of understanding Ayurveda, so that people maybe go and have a look. Again, how do we get hold of your book?
You find it on Amazon. That's the best place. It's called
Right.
In Your Elements.
Great. So we'll make sure that that I mention that on the podcast and on YouTube when it goes out. But get onto Mr. Google and have a look at everything we've been talking about. Just Google doshas and see what comes up. But
Google HeyMonicaB.com.
yeah,
Go
what the
to
hell am I
my
talking
house.
about? Don't do that. You get
What are you
Google.
talking
yeah,
about?
yeah. Give
to
me
my
a-
house.
I'll go and get a new job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just go to HeyMonicaB.com and you'll find I believe there is still, like right up at the top, it's like if you're new to Ayurveda, here's more on the doshas. It's right there.
Well, there you
so just
go.
go to Hey
Hey,
just go to
Monica B.
Monica B.
Go to Hey Monica B and have a look. I'm certainly going to do it. Every time I open your book, there's another bit that jumps out at me. They just go, oh, that's quite cool. I'm going to read a little bit more about that. Now, you chose a track. Now, I don't know how much you're going to go into the story behind this. I know the story behind this, but why did you choose Levitating?
Oh, well, it's a very special song at this time, but when my daughter and I were driving in the car on our way up to this area for the summer, we were singing it in the car. We just kept playing it on repeat. And she says something in the song, you're my little sugar boo or whatever. Anyways, we point at each other when we say sugar boo, and it's just this like, I don't know, and it's up in the stars, and like it's so, like you're dancing, you're levitating, you feel so good, and it's such a fun song. So I wanted to bring that to you and everybody else today.
Brilliant, Monica. As ever, yeah, we're going to do this again, and I sense we're going to do it quite a few more times as we work our way through the book. But yeah, I love having you on the show. But here it is, Levitating.
If you wanna run away with me, I know a galaxy and I could take you for a ride. I had a premonition that we fell into a rhythm where the music don't stop for life. Glitter in the sky, glitter in my eyes, shining just the way I like. If you're feeling like you need a little bit of company, you met me at the perfect time. You want me, I want you, baby, my sugar boo. I'm levitating, the Milky Way, we're renegading. Yeah, 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 yeah. I got you. Moonlight, you're my starlight. I need you all night. Come on, dance with me. I'm levitating. You, moonlight, you're my starlight. I need you all night. Come on, dance with me. I'm levitating.
I'm one of the greatest, ain't no debating on it. I'm still levitated, I'm heavily medicated. Ironic, I gave him love and they end up hating on me. She told me she loved me and she been waiting. Been fighting hard for your love and I'm running thin on my patience. Needing someone to hug, even took it back to the basics. You see what you got me out here doing? Might have threw me off, but can't nobody stop the movement. Let's go. Left foot, right foot, levitating. Pop stars, do a leap with the baby. I had to lace my shoes for all the blessings I was chasing. If I ever slip, I fall into a better situation. So catch up, go put some cheese on it, get out and get your bread up. They always leave when you fall, but you run together. Weight of the world on my shoulders, I kept my head up. Now baby, stand up, cause girl, you
want me, I want you, baby, my sugar boo. I'm levitating, the Milky Way, we're renegading. Yeah, 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 yeah. I got you, moonlight, you're my starlight. I need you all night. Come on, dance with me. I'm levitating. You, moonlight, you're my starlight. I need you all night. Come on, dance with me. I'm levitating. You can fly away with me tonight. So you can fly away with me tonight. Baby, let me take you for a ride. Yeah, 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 yeah. I'm levitating. You can fly away with me tonight. So you can fly away with me tonight. Baby, let me take you for a ride. Yeah, 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 yeah. My love is like a rocket, watch it blast off. And I'm feeling so electric, dance on our song. And even if I wanted to, I can't stop. Yeah, 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 yeah. My love is like a rocket, watch it blast off. And I'm feeling so electric, dance my ass off. And even if I wanted to, I can't stop. Yeah, 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 yeah. You want me, I want you, baby, my sugar boo. I'm levitating, the Milky Way, we're renegading. I got you, moonlight, you're my starlight. I need you all night. Come on, dance with me. I'm levitating. You can fly away with me tonight. So you can fly away with me tonight. Baby, let me take you for a ride. Yeah, 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 yeah. I'm levitating. You can fly away with me tonight. You can fly away with me tonight. Baby, let me take you for a ride. Yeah, 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 yeah. I got you, moonlight, you're my starlight. I need you all night. Come on, dance with me. I'm levitating.
Wow, that finished quickly. Levitating. That was Monica, and just as we finished the interview, we were talking during that track. Monica has got a new book coming out in October, so we'll get Monica back on the show. And what we might actually do is just do one interview that day because you probably figured out Monica can talk, and I think she's got lots of interesting stuff. So as I say, if you're on the telly box, there is Monica's current book, In Your Elements, and Google Hey Monica B, and there's a whole bunch of content on there if you are interested. Even if you're not interested, just go and have a look. And if it's not Ayurveda, have a look at other ways of keeping ourselves healthy, because it's all about being in balance. Now, book review time, and we've got a couple of minutes for a book review. As I'll share with you at the back end of the show, I'm going for a walk today. My walk is going to take, probably about 4.5, 5 days. So let's talk about maps. Pick up an atlas. have a look. I love spending time looking at maps and looking at atlases and just seeing the parts of the world that maybe I've been or maybe I'd like to go to, or maybe if we ever get to travel again, I can go and visit in the future. But take a look at maps, and maps is a great way of actually internalizing and reflecting what's going on in our lives. What is it you look for in a map? Is it the symbols? We used to look for pubs when I was in the British Army, and we'd be going on exercise, or we'd go, all right, where's the nearest pub? Where are the art galleries, the different parts of the world? What do the pyramids look like? Where are they compared to downtown Cairo? Why are they so far or so close to downtown Cairo? What's going on underneath that forest canopy? Start asking questions. I wonder why. My favourite question of all time. I wonder why. And maps are a great way of beginning to investigate. And the more we look at that, the more questions we ask, we begin to investigate ourselves a little bit more. And that goes back to we are the navigator. And the best time to look at the map is before you go into the forest. So slightly linked, and then we are going to talk to Mel about neuropuncture and health and how a holistic approach is far better than just that sort of wild, flappy way of trying to look at life. We've got to look at everything, and I know Mel's here because she's smiling at me on the other side of the desk, which is really great. I don't have to worry about technology or anything. So here's a track to lead into us talking to Mel.
Lead a better life. I need my love to be here. Making each day of the year, changing my life with a wave of the hand. Nobody can deny that there's something running my hands through her hair. Both of us thinking how good it can be. Someone is speaking, but she doesn't know he's there. I want her everywhere, and if she's beside me, I know I need never care. But to love her is to need her everywhere. Knowing that love is to share. Each one believing that love never dies. Watching their eyes and hoping I'm always there. I want her everywhere, and if she's beside me, I know I need never care. But to love her is to need her everywhere. Knowing that love is to share. Each one believing that love never dies. Watching their eyes and hoping I'm always there. We'll be there and everywhere. Here, there, and everywhere.
Here, there, and everywhere. That's sometimes how I feel. I've certainly felt like that this week as I've been putting my rucksack together and all of the gear that I need to take with me into the woods. But we'll come back to that in a little while. I've just, moving on from talking to Monica, I've just had a fascinating conversation about what neuropuncture actually is. Because, sticking needles and sticking electrodes onto the side of me all sounds a little bit scary, but I'm quite sure it's not. And that's why Mel has joined us to talk about what neuropathy, neuropuncture actually is. Good morning, Mel.
Good morning.
So, let's just dive straight into it. We've just had a conversation. We actually started talking about PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and that's something, from my background in the British Army and spending lots of time in the deserts of Iraq and Afghanistan. PTSD is fairly serious. It can stay with us for years and years, and that's possibly because we may be dealing with it in a traditional, and I use that word specifically, rather than looking at other ways of doing it. How might neuropuncture, what is neuropuncture to start with,
Yeah.
and how might it begin to help PTSD?
Cool. So I think a really good way to start this conversation off is to talk about the history of using electricity to modify the brain and body. And our history tells us that right up in Egyptian times, they were using eels, like electric eels, in a tub, I suppose, and putting like diseased tissues and like a foot inside that, and actually using that electricity to regenerate. So it's not something that's like new. However, the science of it has really taken shape over the last few years. One of the doctors who is responsible for a huge discovery of this was Dr. Jijing Han in the 1950s, who did a lot of research around modifying the body with electricity. And fast forwarding to now, Dr. Michael Corradino, who is our teacher in America, has really revolutionized the understanding of neuropuncture. Now, traditional Chinese medicine is acupuncture. And what is really important to remember is that we're not taking away from the tradition of this or the understanding. However, it's looking at the texts that were available 2,000 years ago for Chinese medicine, and looking at it now with a 21st century kind of mindset. And some of the language, when it was translated, was actually incorrect. So things like chi and energy are more like neuroanatomical junctions now
Right.
in the 21st century. And to kind of get a comparison for traditional acupuncture and neuropuncture is that a traditional acupuncturist would place a needle in this place here called liver 3, and this is in between your index finger and your thumb for those who
so
are listening.
if you're on the telly, that bit, that between your thumb and your finger,
and
that
that
bit,
kind of meaty part, they would see redness around that and believe that they've delivered like an energetic force, like a chi, into that site, and that's what's harnessing the rehabilitation of that person. This is well known for pain, this area. Now with science and with all the beautiful technology, functional MRIs, being able to kind of have a look at blood panels and things like that, what we know is that's actually a very important nerve pathway called the superficial radial nerve.
right?
And when you insert a needle into that area, what you're seeing is histamine, red blood cells, white blood cells, prostaglandins, calcitonin gene-related peptide, and nerve growth factor. And it's kind of like a chemical soup. And that soup there isn't an energetic force that's coming out of my field and into yours. It's actually releasing chemistry. And that chemistry travels along the nerve pathway up the arm into the brachial plexus and the cervical plexus.
Yep.
And it actually gates pain. And so they're able to see inside the body these electrical signals because your nervous system is electricity.
Yep.
And instead of manually manipulating it, which is a traditional technique of kind of lifting and pulsing, we clip those needles to a FDA approved medical bioelectric device, and we actually modify the frequency that goes through that needle, and that will harness different results inside of the body. So it's very gentle. It takes 1 amp to light a light bulb.
Right, so my hair's not going to stand on end.
No. So 1 amp to light a light bulb, and we use 1/1 millionth of 1 amp, and that will reduce inflammation, begin soft tissue repair. And we use 1/1000th of an amp, so it's very, very gentle.
I love this.
Yeah.
I read very, very broadly.
Yeah.
Because yes, we can read medicine, or we can read neuroscience, or we can read psychology, or we can read building skyscrapers and become specialist in those things. But the more broadly we read, we begin to identify that everything is actually linked together. And when I work with clients, I talk about brain frequency and the fact that high level beta 3 is that panic state and our frequencies as high as it shouldn't be, trying to bring it back down to alpha level where that sort of, that dream state. And now you're saying that because we are just energy, Einstein proved it, we are just energy, we can use that even in tiny amounts to change us. So let's bring it back to, and I'm going to use PTSD as the example because it is personal to me, but also I think it's probably, I'm going to make a leap here, it's generic enough that we can talk about it without it being specific to someone, and we'll come back to how we talk about that next. So PTSD.
Yeah. So that's a really good subject to talk about as well because of how heavily it's researched. So the American Army, which is a cool link here for you being in the Army, they have actually funded a lot of the research that's gone into neuropuncture, and the use of the prescription that we use in the ear, auricular treatments.
Yep.
The PTSD prescription is actually called the battlefield prescription. And I'm pretty sure it's Dr. Richard Nimsenhow. I might have pronounced that incorrectly, but I'm fairly certain, don't quote me on it though.
No, you've just quoted yourself. I don't have to.
That he did a lot of the research into actually the benefits of this, and it's placing these needles inside the ear in a specific sequence. Now you've got 5 cranial nerves that come out of your brain and into your ear.
Yep.
And so what we do is we put pressure on those nerves, and that signals the brain to downregulate, right? Because PTSD is an upregulation and it's a memory. You know, it's a memory of a trauma, and there's an emotional connection to that. There's usually a physical connection to that. You know, people have pain sometimes connected to that. And it's a really, really strong issue, and a lot of people struggle with how to actually reduce that.
So great, you've just triggered a thought that quite often we talk about PTSD, it's being blown up on the battlefield, it's being shot at, it's that goes back to the First World War, trench warfare, when we actually began to recognise that it was a thing. Yes, it was fear, but it almost overtook fear during the First World War, being that sustained time under pressure. But PTSD can actually affect, and probably does affect, the vast majority of us through things that happen in our lives that we haven't been able to deal with, because as I spoke about at the top of the show, for the most part we deal with effect rather than cause. So needles in the ear, pressure in the ear, go on, I'm fascinated.
So we have a couple of different ways that we can do that. The battlefield prescription is one. You can wear these little ionized magnets on the ear for about 3 to 5 days. You can sleep with them, swim with them, wash your hair, keep them in. We also have surgical implants, and they last for about 2 weeks. We can actually clip our equipment to that. So the American Army are using these prescriptions for their soldiers, and actually the American hospitals are using this as well as prescriptions to gate pain, and they're actually using it over pain medication inside emergency wards in America.
Wow.
So New Zealand is quite far behind the times with this technology. We are the only neuropuncture treatment centre in the Southern Hemisphere. So we are the only people who are actually practicing this in this part of the world. We have been to the States and done training and done a lot of hours to be able to bring this over. And we get wonderful results. And I just want to touch on as well what you said is that trauma doesn't have to be a physical injury or shock. It can be any type of sustained pressure, emotionally, mentally, physically, and it's debilitating for people. It really, really is. And the great thing about neuropuncture is that it's non-addictive, it's non-toxic, it's completely drug-free, and it has very little side effects that are negative, and it doesn't interfere with medication. So it's extremely safe, and with the auricular, the ear work, we can do that in kind of anyone from birth to 100. When we start using electrodes and clipping up to devices, we kind of need a certain age group to be able to tolerate that, because
Yep.
it's not invasive, but you know, you have to be able to kind of coach your mind. Hey, I'm feeling comfortable here being
Mm-hmm.
clipped up. Most people actually fall asleep. It's very gentle. But, you know, young children
Yeah.
aren't overly keen for laying still for half an hour in
No.
any circumstance.
Yeah. Even especially when they're told to.
Yeah. So, our clinic is based at Marston Medical Centre.
So that's Masterton in the Wairarapa in New Zealand,
Yep.
the only one in the Southern Hemisphere.
That is correct.
Right.
Yep. So we're actually teaching courses. We've taught 2 already this year. We're going back and teaching another one in one of the universities in Auckland. And we're doing a public day and 2 practitioner only days where we invite physiotherapists, nurses, doctors, acupuncturists, and they can do our courses to become CPD certified.
CPD?
It's like continued professional development
yep,
for them to stay registered, and learn a few of our prescriptions, obviously, because it's, you know, it's years of training. You kind of can't just do one course and call yourself a neuropuncturist.
Yep.
I myself actually am not certified, so I'm actually a registered naturopath and medical herbalist. That was originally what I did. I'm in my 3rd year of neuropuncture. I have been to America. Part of your training and certification is that you must do cadaver work. So we actually got to dissect a face and a brain.
Wow.
And one of the top institutions in America, there's only 5 places in the world that have live cadavers. So that means that the specimen kind of has passed away the day before. So they don't use
Right.
any chemicals on the body. It's real, kind of real life.
Yeah, totally.
Very fresh. And I have done my exams, but unfortunately I can't go back over there at the moment
Yet.
to do the next part. Peter Larking, who I work with, he's my business partner. He is a certified neuropuncturist, and he is the first certified neuropuncture teacher under the original developer of neuropuncture, Dr. Michael Corradino. So the New Zealand is pretty lucky to have this guy. He is an incredible practitioner. He's got 22 years experience. He was a senior tutor at the Acupuncture College of New Zealand for a number of years. And he's actually going on to do his doctorate in bioelectrics. So it is certifiable at that level in America. And what we're hoping to do in like the future of where we see this is that this is available in every medical centre.
Great.
This is available for all walks of life. You know, it becomes very normalised to get, you know, ear treatments and quick little top-ups. And electroceutical, the industry of this is a multi-billion-dollar industry. You know, pharmaceutical companies are spending billions and billions of dollars and getting little electrodes that you clip in your ear, and you have a little kind of Bluetooth device, and you're
Yep.
able to turn it up and down and gate pain. They're already doing that now. And so this is a more refined way of doing it because we can target areas of the brain. I'll give you an example. Patients who have had like a stroke, they may have had a stroke in the Broca and Wernicke's, which are the speech and language centres, and they're unable to formulate words or formulate a sentence. We can actually thread the needles along those pathways. We've got amazing maps of the brain and where these structures are, clip them up to electricity, and it actually creates a deep cranial electromagnetic field. And that field is actually generating stem cells. It's actually regrowing the brain. And when we work with patients, it's very individualized. We make prescriptions, plans, and treatment dosages for that person.
Yep.
So we will specify exactly what type of work you're going to get done. We might get them to read a poem or speak or practice their words as they're getting treatment. And one guy had almost lost his ability to talk altogether. And I'll never forget it. On like his 3rd or 4th treatment, his wife used to come with him and help interpret what he was saying. And we finished up, and, you know, he never said much, obviously. And he just said, "Bye, Mel." I was like, wow.
Wow. And that's the life changing
Yeah.
that is possible. And yeah, going back to one of the things that Monica said is it's topical. It's for the individual. It's not yes, we have got this capability,
Yeah.
but actually it's specific for those individual needs. You mentioned a public day.
Yeah.
When's that?
So we've got one the one that we're doing is actually in Auckland.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's going to be at one of the colleges that teach acupuncture, and that's going to be on Friday the 3rd of September.
Okay.
You can also book public talks where we come. We do, like, we've spoken to the GPs at Master Medical. We've actually been invited to speak in Greytown. So you can book us and we'll come and we'll talk to you about how it can help. So what we're doing at the moment is a focus on sports medicine and getting, sports teams, because orthopedic work and injury is quite easy to fix and it's quite short.
Yep.
So we're talking 2 or 3 weeks of treatment to rehabilitate like a strained hamstring and you're back on the field. So it's quite rapid. How it's different to like your osteo or perhaps your physio or your chiropractor is that we're not going to see you once a month. You need to be able to work through the electrical progression. So from a microcurrent where we're like reducing the inflammation and repairing your soft tissue into like a bigger current where we're exercising that muscle and kind of healing up a tear or whatever. And so what it might look like for something like a pulled hammy is you come in 3 times a week for the first 2 weeks. The treatments are only 20 to 30 minutes. Once you've got your prescription, we know what we're doing. You
Yep.
lay down, we put it in, we put a timer on, you lay there. We've got a warm blanket.
Fantastic.
Yeah, beautiful music. And the electricity does the work for you. And then we might phase that down to 2 times a week for 1 week and then a follow-up at the end. By that stage, you're either fully rehabilitated or we might say, hey, cool, come back in next week and we'll give you some manipulation.
Fascinating. And I
Yeah.
sense that we are, well, I know we're only just scratching the very, very surface of the opportunity here.
Yeah, I mean, more research is coming out literally every single day. And every single prescription that we use is researched. It's clinically proven and it's clinically reproducible. And this is important because, if you got 100 acupuncturists to needle 1 point,
Yep.
they're all going to do it slightly differently. Is that a problem or is that okay?
Yeah.
Well, in traditional acupuncture, that would be considered a problem, right? Because they think of it as this very small energetic vortex, which there's nothing wrong with that.
Yep.
But it's more like a kind of area of a junction. And
Right.
what we want to do is we want to clip the needle or get the needle as close to a nerve pathway. And we want to get the electricity to skip over that needle and onto that nervous
Yeah. Okay.
pathway. Yeah. And so ways in which we can use it is we do central nervous system. So that's depression, anxiety, sleep, kind of anything to do with the brain, rehabilitating the brain. Lots of concussion work. Concussions are really important
Yep.
to look after. We can do orthopedics, fertility, kind of hormonal modulation, stress, PTSD, thyroid issues, internal medicine. It's so diverse.
How do we find, because we haven't given, as ever, we're running over and we haven't given this the time it deserves. How can people find out more?
So you can call us on 0800 808 555 and that will come straight actually to me where I
Okay.
can discuss with them a lot about their case. What we do is we have about 5 different initial consultation slots. If it's I've hurt my ankle, that's going to be like 45 minutes.
Yep.
If it's I fell over 2010, got concussed, my tooth fell out, I haven't been able to talk since and I haven't slept in 10 years, that might take 3 hours.
Yeah.
And so it's really important that we individualize our care. We also have a really amazing website, which is
Yep.
www.neuromedtech, which is neuromedtech.com.
Yep.
And inside of that, you can see our courses that are for practitioners. You can see how to get a hold of us through the clinic. And also there's a really wonderful blog that Peter has just written about pain medicine and the future of electroceuticals and actually how it works. And it's really, really great. This is for GPs or just the public alike. It's got very well-researched articles inside of there. And it breaks it down on what even is pain.
Great.
What is it? How do we modify it? And how are we going to support your body to rehab itself? Because from birth to death, your brain and body can regenerate. You know, you've just got to fall over and scab your knee up.
And that's, what a great place. So neuromedtech.com
Yeah.
is probably the easiest start point. And from birth to death, we change. We don't have to stay the same. We're not a tree. Get up, move. Mel, absolutely fascinating. Thank you very much for coming in this morning. Lovely to talk. You chose some music.
Yes, I did.
Second choice. You changed it from last week.
It was really hard to choose the music. I've got a very diverse musical taste. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
No, we'll do it again.
Yeah, I'd love to.
So what's your piece of music?
Rufus de Soul.
Yep.
I was trying not to go too hardcore first thing in the morning. As I said, I really do love a lot of different music. Maybe next time I'll pick something even funkier.
Okay. Here it comes then. Thank you very much for your time this morning. Here is your track.
You were right. I know I can't get enough of you. Leave it all to bloom. You were right. I know I can't get enough of you. No, the things that I would do under the water. I'm sinking further down, floating on nothing. I'm nothing. Arms are wide open. I'm calling out your name, sitting and waiting. I'm waiting. You were right. I know I can't get enough of you. You were right. I know I can't get enough of you. Leave it all to bloom. You were right. I know I can't get enough of you. No, the things that I would do. Cold in the river, lips moving, there's no sound. Pulling me under, I'm under. You're giving me nothing. You keep telling me I'll be found. Keeping me guessing, I'm guessing. You were right. You were right. I know I can't get enough of you. You were right. I know I can't get enough of you. You were right. I know I can't get enough of you. Leave it all to bloom. You were right. I know I can't get enough of you. The things that I would do.
You were right. Well, what a show. I'm actually just going to begin to wrap it up now, and we'll play another track in a minute. Thank you so much to Monica Bloom. Get onto Mr. Google, Hey Monica B, and begin to learn about Ayurveda. And what a fascinating conversation with Mel. And that's, for us in New Zealand, or especially in the Wairarapa in Masterton in New Zealand, it's just round the corner. Absolutely fascinating about what we are learning about the human body, what we are relearning. Let's think back to when Mel started talking about the ancient Egyptians over 2,000 years ago, recognizing the importance of electricity in healthcare, not illness care, health care, and that's a conversation that goes on in the Darling household fairly frequently at the moment. Let's start thinking about healthcare, but all the way back to Monica. We are our best navigator. We know what's up. I'm not going to say what's wrong with us. We know what's up. We know that sometimes we just feel a little bit off balance. We hide things from ourselves, and that creates even more pain. It creates shame in ourselves because we're trying to hide it. We're not. When I was brought up, I was always told pride comes before a fall. Well, what's the opposite of pride? If you're not proud of something, then you try to hide it. Now, don't get me wrong, arrogance comes before a fall, and I tell a story of when that came back to bite me hard when I was in command in the book Lead Through Life. But let's go out and let's feel what's right. Let's feel what's wrong with ourselves, and then begin to think, well, what did I eat in the last 48 hours? How much water did I take on? How much exercise did I do? And begin to actually help ourselves be our own navigator, take control of what we have control of. And if it's deep-seated, Mel mentioned if it's an ankle, it might be 45 minutes. But if we've got something deep-seated that's just been gnawing away for years and years and years, that takes time. But we know it's in there. It takes a lot of braverism, guys. Don't get me wrong. It takes braverism to look into our past and realise why we're hurting. But we are the start point. We begin to understand it. We are the maps of our own body. We understand ourselves, and we can begin to feel an awful lot better. So thank you to Monica, and thank you so much to Mel for coming in. I've thoroughly enjoyed today's show. I've learnt a lot. Please listen again. I certainly will be on YouTube or on the podcast, which you can get at ROFM.co.nz. They're both there for you to re-listen to or watch. Next week, there is no show. We'll put a recording up. We'll put the recording up of 2 weeks ago when I didn't have any guests and we were just talking about resilience, the power of resilience, certainty in who we are, where we belong in the world, and how we give back. We'll put that one up next week. But there is no show next week because I am going for a long walk. I'm turning my phone off and I am going to walk 100 kilometres through the middle of nowhere. I'm going to go deep inside. I'm going to do some thinking about where I'm going, where I've been, where I'm off to next. Have a great week. I'm not walking quite this far, but being a little Scottish person, every now and again it is always good to play the Proclaimers.
When I wake up, well, I know I'm gonna be the man who wakes up next to you. When I go out, yeah, I know I'm gonna be the man who goes along with you. If I get drunk, well, I know I'm gonna be the man who gets drunk next to you. And if I haver, yeah, I know I'm gonna be the man who's havering to you. But I would walk 500 miles and I would walk 500 more to be the man who walked 1,000 miles to fall down at your door. When I'm working, yes, I know I'm gonna be the man who's working hard for you. And when the money comes in for the work I do, I'll pass almost every penny on be the man who's lonely without you. And when I'm dreaming, well, I know I'm gonna dream. I'm gonna dream about the time when I'm with you. When I go out, well, I know I'm gonna be the man who goes along with you. And when I come home, yes, I know I'm gonna be the man who comes back home with you. I'm gonna be the man who's coming home with you. But I would walk 500 miles.
And we'll begin to fade the Proclaimers out. Walking 500 and then 500 more. Thanks to Monica, thanks to Mel, thank you all for listening. Having an amazing couple of weeks. I will try not to get too damp and too wet while I'm out in the middle of nowhere. Have an amazing week. That was The Resilient Show for this Friday.